Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. This is the one and only Maverick podcast. I'm your host, DJMaverick, and today we have an awesome guest. We have an entrepreneur, musician, and music producer, Ricardo Sasaki. Hey, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Hey, how are you? It's good to be here, and it's a great opportunity to share a little bit of the music that we love, the music that has been part of our lives. And I actually don't think I know any human being that doesn't have music as part of their lives. So I'm here to talk about that, and thank you very much for the invite.
For those probably 1% of the people out there that don't know you yet, just give us a brief introduction of like who you are, where you were born, and kind of what you do for a living.
Okay, my name is Ricardo Sasaki. Like you said, I was born in San Francisco, California, but I was raised and lived most of my life in Bolivia, South America. And then I came back to live to the United States 15 years ago. I studied music since I was a kid. I went to the Conservatory of Music in La Paz in Bolivia, and I started at a very young age because I come from a family with music traditions. I started a rock band, a very successful rock band in Bolivia called Octavia, which I played with them for 18 years, more or less.
Yeah, we'll have to dig into that because I didn't see that on your list and I was expecting that on the list. So we'll have to dig into that.
Yeah. And then all my life, I did my studies in San Francisco in the College for Recording Arts. So I did study music production and recording engineering. And that's what I did all my life. All my life, I devoted to touring, musician, and all the extra money that I had. I used to work in a recording studio, and I became a partner later on in La Paz. And I did a lot of productions for probably all the major artists in Bolivia at that time. I moved here to the United States, back to Oklahoma in 2006. I'm sorry, 2004, late 2004. And then I kind of continue what I did in Bolivia, which is a lot of music, but at the same time, the studio does a lot of advertising. So up to date, I continued working in RS Advertising, which is my company, half advertising, half music production. And also, there's one more thing that I do. I teach one or two classes every semester in ACM UCO. Those are
Awesome.
audio engineering and or software recording classes related.
Wow, man, talk about being busy. That's a pretty incredible list you've got there. So
Thank you.
basically, it sounds like music has been like an integral part of your entire life. Was that like your only love since you were, as far as you can remember, or how did that sort of start?
It started with my family. I have my dad's side of the family. There were a lot of musicians, classically trained, and they started teaching me at a very young age, or they asked me to play some chords to accompany them. And I don't think the appropriate word would be forced, but indirectly forced to take that route.
Yeah.
Very many years ago, and that's all I did. I mean, since a very young age, my first job was playing piano in some events and having a guitar and piano duo with my friends in the conservatory and things like that. So I never experienced anything different outside the music world.
Awesome. So there was never like another thought in your mind of maybe I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a doctor, or nothing like that, right?
My mom pushed me when I finished high school to take a semester in biochemistry.
Oh yeah. What was that like? Miserable?
Well,
Yeah.
I just discovered that wasn't my thing. I did okay, but really, I think I feel very fortunate, and I think living in the music business, from the music business, from the audio recording business, it's it's a weird combination between your life, what is your life, what do you do for a living, and also sometimes you discover that you don't even have any hobbies. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
because the moment instead of going and playing golf on the weekends, you just go back and record your own material or your own songs or trying to produce something different. So you're constantly involved in music. It's wicked.
Yeah, but I mean, what people say is that if you do what you love for a living, that you never have to work a day in your life, and it sounds like you're doing that. So
Yes,
that's pretty
luckily, yes,
incredible.
yes,
So the purpose of this show, I just kind of want to bring different music tastes out there to everybody in the audience, and also tell a story because I think it's really incredible how much you can tell just like listening to people's songs and kind of what it triggers in their mind. Because when I listen to a song, it takes me to a particular moment, time, and place. Like, oh, I was right here, and I feel like I'm right there when I'm listening to that song. Does that happen to you?
yes, absolutely. It does. It really does. I must say a disclaimer. Uh, I I am the kind of person that when I first listen music, I listen to the music itself. I'm not a very lyrical kind of person. Okay,
Yeah.
so the lyrics come to me later, if that makes any
Okay.
sense. For me, it's the
Yeah.
texture, the color, the music, the chords, the melodies, etc.
Yeah, that happens to me, but in a different way because I DJ. So whenever I listen to music, I'm listening to it as a potential of like, is this going to move the crowd? Is this going to have like a upbeat to it? Is this going to be energetic enough? When I first listen to something, it's not enjoying it; it's more analyzing. Which I don't know what it's like to just listen to music for fun. Like it seems like I have to do both all the time. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what happens to me. So tell me about this first song. It's Chris Isaak, Wicked Games. And Chris Isaak, when I listen to his stuff, and you tell me if you feel the same way, it feels like kind of like a 50s vibe to his voice and even like the musical elements. And that's kind of what it reminds me of. But tell me a little bit about what this song and what it means to you.
Well, to me, and I chose this song because it has been the song that that has transitioned me from being a kid to being an adult, I should say. This is the song that was number one in the radio when I moved from Bolivia to San Francisco to study in the College for Recording Arts. In fact, one of my teachers was sound guy for Chris Isaak. So I got to hear a lot of him, and this song was number one. And when you're in college in your room, sometimes I'm sure you did it too. You have a playlist that you play over and over and over
Oh,
and
yeah.
over again. I discovered, and I really got into the production and engineering kind of part of the music industry. So
Okay.
it has a lot of meaning, and also through the years, because I love this song. I had a collection of almost 50 different versions of this song,
Oh, yeah.
played by a guy in Russia, played by Grimes, played by you name it. There's so many very different cover versions
Yeah.
of this song. One thing that is amazing is he has been able to capture that 50s Elvis kind of sound into modern rockabilly
Definitely.
mood. Yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely hear that. And it's funny that this song brings you so much happiness because if you just listen it at a high level, it kind of sounds a little bit sad,
Yeah.
It sounds like
Yeah.
a little melancholy.
Yeah.
So it's funny that when you hear this song, it's like all this happiness, all these wonderful memories. That's pretty incredible.
I think this song also represents. I mean the bigger hits that he had, but of course I would listen. He has other great songs like Blue Hotel and on the Lonely Highway, things like that. And those songs really represent what you mentioned before, that he brings back those 50s years. Songs that you heard with your dad. My dad used to listen to some Elvis. So this is kind of belongs to the past and to the present.
Yeah, I like it. Awesome. There you go. Track number 1, Chris Isaak, Wicked Game. Ricardo's top 10. I like it. So tell me a little bit about you growing up. You said you grew up in Bolivia. What was
Yes.
that like?
It was well, like I said, pretty regular gig as a kid,
Yeah.
going to school. But I always took music lessons. I was pretty much forced to, first, like I said, not in the sense that they would obligate me to go, but in the sense of, it was just a family thing that my uncle used to have a music school. So in the afternoons, and I was up to my 11th years old, more or less. I was a very hyperactive kid, so my parents tried to keep me as busy as possible. So
Okay.
I think I found in music a way how to spend all that energy. And then I transitioned from family teaching into the Conservatory of Music, and that has been a priority for me, almost like school. So I used to go to school in the morning and music school in the afternoon, and that became my life. I mean, like we were talking earlier, it's sometimes you don't even have a hobby, but that work that you do in music it's a weird combination into what it would be a hobby for somebody else, but for you it's your profession, or
Yeah,
end up being your profession.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So tell me, how did you get exposed? Because when I look at your list, it's super like rock, pop. Like you wouldn't think like this would be Bolivia. So how did you get exposed to so much music, so many genres?
Yeah. There are two big elements. One, my cousins and my a lot of my family used to live in the Bay Area in San Francisco, so they would send me quite a few bit of music.
Awesome.
So my dad, because he went to high school and he also graduated college in San Francisco. I was born there. He was very an avid listener of people from the 60s and 70s. Um, you know, this is a little bit interesting. Is I lived in dictatorship in the early 70s. So a lot of Latin music was banned because it was protest music. Okay.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was
Oh,
banned
wow.
from the radio. And you'll find this interesting also. I didn't discover Bolivian music, the folklore, all the beautiful music up until I was almost 20 years old. You know,
Wow. That's pretty incredible.
because I grew up very alienated with American uh, culture because of the family and because of the radio stations that I chose to listen over there that were pretty much top 40s, the format of top 40s at that time.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. That's pretty. So the radio stations were playing like American rock music basically at the time.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That
And
explains a lot.
and there's one more thing that you pointed out that I would like to explain is um, my spectrum of music that I like. And I applaud you for this. You're the first person that made such a concise list.
You heard it first right here on
Yeah.
the Maverick podcast.
and and the thing is, I wanted to my music spectrum is so broad. I listen everything from jazz to heavy metal, and that happened because of times and periods in my life. I had my time where I loved heavy metal, or it was in, so we didn't have any other option but to listen to it and maybe
Yeah.
like some songs. Obviously, and again, I mean, this list would have 100 songs, but
Yeah.
we're just going to the ones that kind of had a real meaning in changes, I would say, in my life. However,
Yeah.
yes, I like some metal. I really enjoy like Iron Maiden, Scorpions, all the bands when I was still in high school, and because that's what they used to play in radio
For
station
sure.
all the time.
It's funny because when you sent me the list, you sent me an English list and a Spanish list, and there were 10 songs each. And I said, Ricardo, usually the show averages about an hour and a half. Are you sure you want to do this? And you're like, okay, well, let me condense it down to one list.
Yeah.
You're the first guest to do that. So, and I totally identify that because I try to work on my top 10 and I keep changing it all the time, all the time. Like, oh, I remember this song because of this, it
Yeah.
changes all the time. So
Yeah.
tell me about this next song, Duran Duran, and what it means to you. It's called Save a Prayer.
Save a Prayer was one of the very songs that I was trying to learn when I was a kid. And it had, I'm a keyboard player. So
Yeah.
this is a
I was going to
keyboard
say
band.
the synths, when I
Yeah.
heard the synths, I was like, that's Ricardo right there.
Yeah. and I wanted to learn the song so bad because it has that mysterious melody, and it had so many keywords that I used to love it. So I started learning those few notes at the beginning, and then I used to bug my dad all day long when he came to work, uh, tired, of being working all day, to start first of all writing the lyrics, for the songs, because at that time we didn't have access to buy as many imported albums. Okay, so if you buy,
and there's no Google, you can't Google the lyrics.
No.
Yeah,
we didn't even have computers, man. I'm dating myself right now. but there's, I mean, I guess Commodore 64 was the first one that came at that time. But that being said, I didn't have access to all albums imported with lyrics and text sheets and things like that. So there was no other option than talk with my dad to kind of write down the lyrics, and then me kind of learning, singing, and translating, understanding what it says. So
wow. And that's how you learned the song.
Yes,
with your dad writing the lyrics and everything.
Yes,
yeah,
and also I think the Duran Duran is it's an iconic band of the movement of the pop that happened in the 80s. I think Depeche Mode, even U2, and The Cure, bands of those caliber. I think Duran Duran kind of encompasses the sounds of all this movement of music. And
I would say even to the 90s, because when I think of Duran Duran, I think of Come Undone. Have you heard that song?
Yes,
Come Undone?
Of course, yes.
Like that was like my song, right, in the 90s, but you're probably like, that's probably like, not good Duran. I appreciate the 80s Duran.
I like it. No, I totally like it. Yeah. I really actually love that album. And I guess it's the album where you have Come Undone and Ordinary World also.
Yeah.
A couple of iconic ballads back in the 90s.
The music videos for those were pretty cool too.
Yeah, and you know what? They are. I think they take the flag for the 90s and 80s pop sound.
Yeah, for sure.
And also let's not forget that they had a song in the James Bond movie series. They did A View to a Kill. I don't know if you're probably too young to remember that.
No, I remember.
Yeah, and cool. I think they're very iconic.
Yeah, for sure. I like Duran Duran. It's funny how you had to go all that extra mile to be able to learn the lyrics and learn how to play this song. Did you finally learn how to play it? Like, were you able to accomplish that?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. So when did you first start a band? When did that sort of...
I started a band in 1988. I used to play with other bands, but they were either cover bands just to make some money, or duos, or accompaniment for some singers. I used to play piano for the conservatory choir, different kind of things like that. But the moment that we started Octavia, and we had a different name at that time, it was, I remember the date, it was December 23rd, 1988, in my house. That's when we started. Yeah.
And was keyboard always your instrument, like from day one, or did you explore other instruments?
The only instrument that I played. And then I jumped into production. So I I play a lot less keyboards now. I think I'm more devoted into the production and recording.
Okay, cool. And it's cool that you started off with keys because like keys is something that you can play by yourself. If you're like a bass player or something,
Yeah,
you can only do so much. You can't really do the chords and the melody. So if you have keys, you kind of can be your own one man show at
correct.
that point.
Yes,
You can start to write songs, you can do all that stuff.
yes. As my piano teacher used to say, every song in the world should have piano.
There you go. Did you write any songs? Have you written
I
songs?
did write a lot of songs with Octavia, and man, I did have a lot of number ones in the radio along with my friends. And Octavia, for those of you that don't know, is the top or one of the top rock bands in Bolivia. We have toured extensively in different countries: Argentina, Chile, Peru, Colombia. We did we did Rock al Parque in Colombia. We played in Mexico, and we played several times with bands that you probably love, like Café Tacuba. We played with Gustavo Cerati as well after he left Soda Stereo,
Uh-huh.
and we played with Aterciopelados and many other artists in our career.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, so for everybody listening, definitely go and check out on Spotify or whatever digital platform you like. Just search for Octavia and you can just have a little bit of taste of kind of what they did because I mean, you're kind of downplaying it, but it was a pretty big band and it sounds like you got to tour all over the place. So
yeah, and
that's really
and
cool.
my friends are still play. They're still a big band, and I think one of the characteristics of Octavia is that we included some native instruments of South America, of the Andes, into our music. So it was kind of like a mesh between the modern pop, rock and roll, and um, and native music.
How long did you tour with Octavia? How long did that go for?
16 years.
Okay. Awesome. And then you were just like you moved to the US and that kind of what
Yes, we
happened
we
or
actually came together. We came all together. We came all to do a couple of albums here in Oklahoma because a friend of ours was a music promoter, and he brought the band. It was a pretty substantial, big project, but it didn't quite end very well. So my friends had to leave. My family was already here, so I just decided to stay here. Yeah.
And do you miss that? Because I know, and this is just like I'm just a little sliver. When you play in front of the audience,
Yeah.
that adrenaline rush and hearing the response you're getting with the music, I mean, it's addicting.
Totally,
Do you?
I miss it every day. However, here and there, I sometimes I have some gigs locally with some friends, and I get to get a little taste of that.
Yeah, and of course you're surrounded by music just because you're working in the studio and doing all that. So you still have music, but I just wondered if you miss that audience. That piece is like it's almost like a drug. It's
Yes,
so addicting.
it is. It is. You're absolutely correct.
Tell me about David Bowie, Ashes to Ashes.
Okay. Uh, let me tell you one thing about Ashes to Ashes. And one of the things why I didn't include Octavia in the list is because that's the music I made, but this is the music that influenced me, and this
Okay.
particular artist has a big, huge influence in me personally as a musician. That became part of the music that I wrote, and the arrangements, and the line of sound that I would pursue with my productions. David Bowie has entered into the avant-garde music movement because he used to work with Mike Garson, which is the piano keyboard player, and he's a very what we call avant-garde kind of pianist. So that kind of arrangements and those kind of uniqueness in their sound has taught me to look for that on every single piece of work that I do. I'm always trying to, even if sometimes we cannot always give that avant-gardeness to the song or that modernity, but we're in a better stage when we find a unique sound, something that is going to make our artists very, very special. And I think that's what it has been the biggest influence of David Bowie in my music career. Later on, I met Mike Garson personally a few years ago in LA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I went to NAMM convention. I don't know if you ever
Yeah,
been.
absolutely.
I went
Music
to
show, yeah.
I went to NAMM and music show, and he was basically playing like 6 or 8 feet away from me, and I got to see the whole 40 minutes of him playing,
Yeah.
right in front of me. So it was an
Did you
amazing.
fanboy?
I
Did you
did.
fanboy,
Of,
or were you able to
of,
talk to him?
of course, I didn't take any pictures, but I
No.
spoke with him and I said, I'm a huge fan. Actually, I had his album in my phone at that time in my iPod.
Uh-huh.
And we talked for a few minutes, but of course he had to go because his students were playing as well, etc. So, but at least I got to meet one of my icons in person.
Yeah, everybody says never meet your heroes because you'll be disappointed. It sounds like it was a pretty good interaction for you.
It really was. Yes.
What was interesting to me when I saw this on the list is that you picked the live version.
Yes.
And that was interesting to me.
That has the piano solo at the end.
Yeah.
and let me tell you one more thing. My ringtone is Ashes to Ashes.
Oh yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can count on my hand probably the number of live albums that are actually engineered correctly. Like this right here, if you listen to it, everything is so tight and you can hear every instrument and the vocals are super clean.
Yeah.
Like that has to be difficult to do in a live setting, That's incredible.
It is. Yes, it is. It is a lot of post-production work too. Yeah, definitely.
What would you say whenever you're producing a song? What is your approach? Do you allow the musician to sort of figure out what they record first, like drums or bass or whatever? Or what is your approach when you're recording?
I normally try to see them playing live all together, and then I suggest for a band to play all together, they really need to be all of them really good. If not,
Okay.
when you're doing a professional album, it's better to take it one by one, or maybe drums and bass, and then the rest, or something in that respect, so you can have a little bit more control over the instruments. But the difficulty when you do that one by one is to make sure everything is going to sound
The timing, right?
all together at the end. Make it sound like they play together. Yeah.
Yeah. So how many takes do you think on average it takes to produce a song?
That depends on how well rehearsed they are.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one thing. And also, sometimes you come with an idea to the studio, and that idea sometimes starts changing a little bit. So that sometimes takes a little bit longer time.
Who are some of your favorite producers that you sort of look up to or inspired you?
One of the biggest producers of all times has been Quincy Jones.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I like him because of the variety of music that he has done.
Have you seen the documentary for him that's on Netflix?
I did.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like he even worked with like orchestras and like Frank Sinatra, Michael Jackson, everybody, right?
Yes, and I really like him for that. Michael Jackson's albums were produced so amazingly. I also follow. I used to be a big fan of Bruce Swedien. That's the name of the guy that recorded the albums of Michael Jackson. Okay, and that guy was so amazing that they were able to talk with audio manufacturers and develop new technologies in order to use them in Michael Jackson's music. He was that kind of a top artist that they can afford to do that.
Because I think even to this day, the microphone that Michael Jackson most famous used, the Shure SMB 7 or whatever that's called,
Uh-huh.
they still like hold that as like the standard for vocals in a lot of studios.
Yes, yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, as you know, a lot of engineers will love condenser microphones, but at the same time, there are some good old school dynamic microphones that work very well.
yeah.
I also like I think Brendan O'Brien, the producer of the Stone Temple Pilots, he has changed a little bit of the history of sound. Uh, when all this grunge uh, movement came in the 90s, I think his sound was so tight that had still that rock and roll sound, but with a twist of that, a touch of that grunginess, and brightness in the sound. Yes.
So when you listen to today's music, does it drive you crazy? Because these SoundCloud rappers, everything's super like overdriven,
It
saturated. The
does.
bass is all wobbly.
It
What do you
does.
think when you listen to
I
that?
I think it's I'm trying to adjust because I teach. I'm trying to change my vision on the new trends. And unfortunately, I mean, you see some things. I can guarantee you that a lot of things that we listen, and they are for some engineers, low quality audio. They become trends. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a new trend. So you as an engineer start looking to in a complicated way how to make something sound like that new trend when it's something that just probably happened by accident, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to open my head. I try to analyze also a little bit of for example, the use of bass. You hear more recordings, even rock and roll now. They come with a lot more bass in their mixes, and that's because hip hop has changed the history of how we listen music. You know
Yeah, even country's doing that now too.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and if you don't do it, then you're gonna be listening to different genres of music, and the moment they hear your song, it's just gonna drop.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder, I ask myself if like what's happening now with SoundCloud rappers is kind of what happened in the 90s with grunge music where, everything used to be so perfect, but then grunge music comes along and it's like you don't have to sound perfect. You can have feedback in your recording. You can scream, like you can be out of tune a little bit.
yeah,
I wonder if that's kind of like today's grunge, the SoundCloud rappers maybe like, anybody can record something. You can be at home and you just record it and upload it to SoundCloud.
I think you're
So
absolutely correct. I mean, I can guarantee you that some of that is just uh, something that just happened in the studio, feedback, and that became a new trend back then.
tell me about this next track. So it's Terrence Trent, Sign Your Name. Tell me a little bit about this track.
Okay, that song, I love this song because that's the first song I heard in an actual recording studio.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, when we had our band back in when we started our band, one of our teachers had a home recording studio, so we went to do a demo, and he took us to a professional recording studio. He was friends with the owner of this professional recording studio because he used to record jingles and stuff in there, and that's the studio, by the way, that I ended up being a partner, and I used to work for many years.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and when I came
Okay.
in, the owner of the studio, my friend Sergio Claros, and he's also my engineer mentor. Um, he was listening to this album. And I don't know if you started noticing a pattern here. I like a lot of songs that have that kind of mysterious melody vibe.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely has like a sway to it.
Yes, out of the ordinary. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I fell in love with this album. This is the time. I don't know if you remember. This particular album came along at the same time as Eddie Brickell and the New Bohemians.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then I remember also some Peter Gabriel came really strong at that time, and but this for me was an iconic song in the late 80s, and
Yeah.
it was the first song, that I listened as a reference in the recording studio, in studio
On like
speakers.
monitor.
Exactly. Small monitors, big monitors, and you're like, oh my God, this sounds so killer.
But yeah, I was saying when I heard this, the synth was also pretty prominent in the song, so I really like the sound of it. So whenever you were recording, were you still having a band at the same time when you were part of that studio,
Yes.
or were you just focused on studio?
No, it was a parallel thing. I had the band and the studio at the same time.
Okay. So have you ever had like quote unquote regular job like your entire life, or has it always been music?
That was my regular job.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And-
The studio really was my regular job. I
okay.
basically work in the studio from 9 to 5. But the 9 to 5 is it was always longer hours because we had to do a lot of stuff. We used to do music and commercial work, so I used to spend long hours in the studio, and a few days, of course, you're working in the studio up to some point, and then go rehearse with the band. And on the weekends,
Wow.
you travel with the band. So it was a never ending thing, and uh, very few days off.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people think to make it in the music business, you just need a little bit of luck. No, you need to work hard, and I think that's one of the keys of succeeding. Or i- if we don't use the word success, but as being able to live doing what you like, it
Yeah.
demands a lot of work.
What advice would you give to somebody if they're out there listening and they want to get into music production? What approach would you take? Would you take working for an already established studio, or would you just start doing it from home and sort of teaching yourself? What advice would you give?
I think if you're gonna teach yourself, you need to be very disciplined and do a lot of reading. Um, I teach a lot of. Sometimes my students hate me for this, but I teach a lot of heavy theory in my beginners class because that's where
Okay.
everything comes from. If you don't understand the basics of what does the EQ does, or the compressor, or the limiter, or any piece of gear, then even if you watch tutorials in YouTube, you're not gonna be able to understand not even the lingo. You know,
Yeah.
so it's always good to have a background of either reading, or at least try to take a couple of classes of the very basics fundamentals to understand what every specific piece of gear is made to do.
So tell me, when did the transition to Oklahoma happen? How did that happen?
Well, that happened when we came with my band and we produced a couple of albums here in Oklahoma. And then
Okay.
it actually went really, really well. And then, of course, the big project had a little bit of lack of funding at the end. But my family already moved here. We had bigger plans with the band to stay here for a while. But unfortunately, my friends had to go back, and because I'm a U.S. citizen, so I had a little bit more flexibility to being able to
Sure.
stay here, and I decided to stay here. Um, at that particular time, there was also a little bit of political insecurity in Bolivia, which happened a few months before I came here. So I just decided to change
Okay.
my home. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tell me about this next track by Seal. It's called Violet. Tell me what it means to
Oh,
you.
that's going to be a long talk about
Oh
seal.
yeah. Let's get into it.
Yes.
We got time.
I love this song because of the instrumentation.
I had a feeling you were going to say that, by the way.
Yeah. So if you
Also
if you
the synth once again.
Yes. If you listen to the chords, they are like what we call jazzy chords, you know? They're not just regular major and minor, you know, they have extra notes to it, you know, which is like
Yeah.
the 7, 9, 11, etc. So that's one thing that kind of, I mean, drove me insanely crazy, amazed by this song. And when I heard this full album, there's two things that you need to know. I am a big Trevor Horn fan. He's also a great producer. Okay, and he basically produced all the Seal 1, 2, 3, and 4 albums, I think, and outside of being a great producer, I think he really gave a unique sound. So Seal came out, and it was definitely a different kind of sound of the pop that we were used to listen in radio.
Yeah.
Even later when we had songs, the song that came to the movie, um, um, what is it called? Kiss from a Rose, the Batman
Yeah.
movie. You know,
Yeah. That was a huge track for him.
exactly. But it had definitely a different vibe. It wasn't the pop that we were. So it is very intricate musically, and at the same time, it is vocally very intricate. I mean, his vocals, his harmonies are huge, you know, they're like massive. So I think what captivated me was first the level of production of this artist, and second, the music. And I became a
Okay.
huge Seal fan since then, since I started listening to this first album.
Where were you in your life when you listened to this track? Where were you? Like, what was going on in your life?
I think actually I was going back. I just went back from. I was leaving San Francisco and going back to join my band in Bolivia.
Okay.
Okay, that was the time
Cool.
of my life. So we're talking these early '90s, '92 approximately. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Now, I often ask myself about artists like Seal, why they didn't blow up more than they did, and why they didn't create more albums than they did. Because vocally, he's incredible. He's unique. You can definitely tell it's him. Why do you think artists like him don't go on to like be mega stars? I mean, he is huge, but he could have done more, I think, if he wanted to. Why do you think he just kind of stopped?
Well, he didn't really stop. There's a series of albums that they started recording with him, which is he started recording the classics. So he started recording a lot of blues and Sinatra songs, and I mean, you name it. He done several of those kind of albums, and I believe his latest real album with some pop music in it is probably from not too long ago. It's gotta be like 2014 maybe. So
Okay.
I don't think it's that long. It's just that he did that shift into this more soul and classics for a while, and I think that's
Okay.
where we as listeners get a little bit of the disconnect. Even that I'm a huge Seal fan, I'm not. I don't enjoy those kind of albums as I would do his own music and his own productions.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what like Luis Miguel did, right? Because he had his original pop sound, and then all of a sudden he went to do all these traditional like mariachi songs and stuff like that, which was huge for him.
Yeah.
But me personally, I enjoy more of his original pop stuff. That's
Correct.
kind of what I
Exactly.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of. That's a very good comparison.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So tell me, how do you get into advertising? How do you're a musician all your life, and then all of a sudden it's like advertising.
Yes.
Where does that come from?
So because I work in the studio, we used to do a load of jingles and commercials. Okay, so that kind of led me into being an engineer, and also kind of like an account executive for some advertising agencies. So I had to ended up going to meetings with the advertising agency here, and
Yeah.
for some reason or another, being the planning committee to launch this campaign, or
Yeah.
we used to do also a lot of governmental work for campaigns like health campaigns, or different things that governments
Do you
need
enjoy
to.
that? Do you enjoy the sales part of it? Because when I talk to a lot of creatives, they're like, I hate being the sales guy. I just want to do the creative work.
Yes.
I hate being, I feel like a used car salesman. I don't want to sell.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy the sales piece?
Not really, but I found it that it's necessary. I think we all have to do it at some point in our lives, and whatever you do, even if you're a musician, even if you're an engineer, if you're an advertiser, you have to sell yourself at some point to in order to being able to get work. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And with the advertising, you've worked with pretty big names, right? Like you've worked with pretty big companies and
Yeah.
big
It
promotions.
was inevitable. I mean, over there in Bolivia, we work with agencies that used to handle Coca-Cola, Pepsi, all the regular brands that you see
Yeah.
every day. It was pretty much normal. Now here in Oklahoma, I'm still in the small stage. Of course, I have some plans to grow in the near future, and I don't I don't know if my goal is going to be to reach the huge level of advertising agencies, like McCann Erickson, or because it would take generations to build those kind of companies. But I feel comfortable right now working with. Just to give you an example, I work with Ackerman McQueen, which is the bigger agency here in Oklahoma City. So,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
they are, amazing people with me. We do a lot of work together, and I mean, every time they need something in Spanish, I'm the person that they call, and we done excellent work. We had a great experience. So we have a really fun, good relationship. And in fact, I'm going to tell you one more thing. They have an amazing recording studio
Oh,
in the
really?
agency.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it's
Okay.
very,
Where's
very.
that, downtown,
They
or where's
just
that
they just
located?
moved to Midtown, but they used to have it here on the north side of Oklahoma City in the V Alliance building. I
Okay.
don't know if you. It's very close to the Penn Square Mall.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I know what you're talking
Yes,
about.
so they used to have a huge one there. Well, but and things like that, I enjoy doing quite a bit of work, with other people as well.
Sure. Where does the name Addis come from? What does that mean? Where did that come from?
RS, it's the phonetic spelling in English of my initials.
Ah, okay. Man, I was always thinking it
It's
was like something like
RS.
the zodiac sign or
It is
something.
the god of war in Greek mythology, but it's
Okay.
really the phonetic spelling of my initials. And I
Oh, wow, that's
and I
funny.
had I had that brand since I am I want to say 22 years old. I had a hippie friend that was traveling from Argentina to Mexico back and forth, and just to make a few bucks, he used to do tattoos. Okay, he wasn't even a great tattoo artist. So I asked him,
Yeah.
"Hey, man, we have some wine one day," and I'm like, I need something that's going to represent me. That's going to be my logo."
Yeah.
And he did a tattoo here in my hand. Okay, he just
Oh,
drew
okay.
it, and I'm like, "Oh, I love it. Let's just do it."
So you trusted him to just freehand something on your
Freehand.
hand, like
No,
just
no, no,
go.
no. He did it in paper, and then I loved it, and
Okay.
he did it in my hand. And
Okay.
then this particular piece of art became kind of my logo, my personal brand. I even had the opportunity and the luck to being able to do a design in one of my keywords. And
Oh, yeah?
yeah, so I converted everything. Instead of having white and black keys, all the keys are black. and I had this
Oh,
logo
nice.
in silver, on top of that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And now it's a little bit, has some scratches here and there, but that's what ours come from.
That's funny because I always thought like it was like Audius, like Zodiac, but no, it's like simple. It's just your initials.
Yes.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, so tell me about this next track. And to me, this is probably like one of the worst band names. Like, it's hard to like even pronounce, and I don't know where it came from, but musically, they're incredible. And I'm talking about Jamiroquai,
Okay.
and this one's Space Cowboy. But that name, like, where did that name come from? I always wondered, like, come on, that's the name you're gonna go with? It's unique, I guess,
Yes.
right? Tell me about Space Cowboy.
I would compare this to Seal, but this is my Seal of the late '90s. Okay, so as musicians, we are always looking for new sounds. Okay, and there's other things that I found in my life. Let's say I'm a huge drum and bass fan. I actually had it, and I probably still do have a big collection of some CDs of, and you probably know these names like Apollo 440, Goldie, etc., etc.
Oh,
Okay.
nice. You like all that
Oh,
stuff?
I love it.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
But in my quest to look for new sounds, then Jamiroquai came, like he says, from
Yeah.
space, and man, and he had that element, like we were talking about Chris Isaac. So he brought that funk and that freshness, that happiness,
Yeah.
that
Yeah, 'cause if you close your eyes, you listen to it, and you would think that it's like some old school 70s funk band
Yes.
that's playing this. You would never picture this guy. And I think his hat like a traditional like Bolivian hat, or where's that hat from?
in one of the videos, it is a traditional Bolivian hat. It's called Yuchu, the one that it's very tight to his head. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
But he used very different hats, and what is funny is the story says that this guy, used to have a lot of money, so he was able to hire, really, really accomplished and great musicians to do the sessions.
Okay.
Yeah, and
His music videos were pretty incredible too. Like,
yes.
there was one called You're Never Gonna Learn or something like that. And I think it was banned in the US because he basically took all these images of like bad things, like, mistreating of animals or riots, and, just making you become more aware of all the bad stuff that's going, to make you think about, maybe you should change. And it was banned in the US, which is kind of funny.
Yes, and also speaking of a little bit more trivial things, he used to have a collection of Lamborghinis and Porsche. And I don't know if you remember the videos that he has, racing different colored Lamborghinis, different colored Porsche,
So
Ferraris.
a funny story about that, there was a purple Lamborghini, and I think at the time he said he was dating this crazy girl, and she was like, who's gonna be I think the song is like Cosmic Girl or
Cosmic
something
Girl,
is the
yes.
name of the track.
Yes.
And she was like, who's gonna play it? I want to play it. So he said, like, I don't know. So he made the video be about the Lamborghini, and that was a Cosmo Girl.
Yes.
So he said that he did that because the girlfriend was so crazy. He's like, no.
Yeah, no, in those stories, I mean, also, like the bass player of this band is, so phenomenal. His name is Paul Turner. He plays, his personal band is a very dark rock band. It's called the Dark Sinatras.
Okay.
But then
where were you in life?
But he comes and plays, this amazing bass. I was in the actual, I think in the one of the peaks of playing with Octavia at that time, and we were always looking into sharing new music, etc. And I think this sound has marked a lot of it has influenced a lot of friends of mine, and the way they play and the way they write music, because they discovered a little bit of the funk and that 60s an early 70s sound coming back. And um, I think that's why I chose this, because it has marked a change in a little bit of the songwriting and the sound. I was, and again, like you said earlier, we need to be very concise in the list. But I think he represents that kind of movement as well. Okay, so
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
as for now, we're talking that pretty much every artist that we selected in this list, they represent a movement of sound, a movement of artists, a change in the dynamic of how we listen to music, etc.
Yeah, I think all your artists so far are kind of like pushing the boundaries of like, where they are, and kind of if you think about the sound that was going on at that particular time, they're going a completely opposite
Yes,
direction.
absolutely.
Awesome. I like it, man. That name still, Jamiroquai.
Yes.
Like, I don't know what the meaning is behind that, but man, talk about a difficult name for your
I
band.
know.
So was there ever a time in your life when music was sort of not working out, or where it was really difficult? You always hear about the starving artist, right? Was there ever a time where you're like, well, maybe I need to go and do a traditional job?
Um,
Did that ever
no, it didn't happen. Luckily, it didn't. However, the beginner stages of our band were, um, we are the typical story. We are the kids that recorded our first album that was a cassette tape at the time. So our product was
So it's like one take. We're gonna do one take.
no, 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 no. We actually work in the studio and we did it
Oh, so
formally.
you had
But,
multi-track.
but what I'm saying is the product ended up being the cassette tape.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay. I thought you were saying your first one. You recorded on one tape. We're gonna record on a cassette.
No, we were lucky. We were lucky enough to have teachers that helped us through our careers in their home recording studios doing demos, and we were lucky to find this studio that trusted and believed in us, and they did our first production. So, but the product was a cassette tape, and obviously he started acting kind of like a record label and trying to take the song into the radio stations, etc. But we had to do the legwork as well. So I remember
Yeah.
us going, radio station by radio station, knocking the doors, and out of 10 radio stations, two said yes, the other one said no. We
Yeah,
don't
for
we
sure.
don't play local stuff. Typical stories that you hear everywhere else. And we did. Here's what makes me feel very proud is we did that work, but on the second album they were looking for us. We weren't looking for them anymore. You know what I mean? So it was a very good success story, I should say. Yeah, it took us years, to get to the level where we can, you know, just live out the music. Sometimes we had to do a few extra things here and there. Luckily, my thing was doing the studio. So
Yeah. That's pretty sweet, man, because you always hear about the starving artists, and maybe some people often give up on their dream just because it takes time. It takes time to build that audience, to build that following. And if financially, if you can't make it, like sometimes you just have to throw in the towel,
yes,
unfortunately. So that's pretty cool that it sounds like it was, something promising, even though there was maybe only two out of those radio stations that said yes, there were still two that said
yes,
yes,
correct, exactly,
so that's really cool.
yes.
Would you say that now it's more difficult to do that, to sort of become a popular band, or no?
I think it is. I think there's a lot more offer, and you have to work a little bit harder. And plus, you need to constantly change your knowledge. You need to learn new stuff every time. Back in the day, at least the the new technologies and the new trends, they would last a little bit longer. They have a longer period of life. They lasted a few years. Nowadays, I mean, things change by the day.
Yeah,
Tomorrow there's
people's attention spans are like
exactly, and
yeah,
it has changed the dynamic. You don't need to do an album anymore. You can do an EP, and but one thing hasn't changed is whatever you do it, whether you did it back in the day or today, you still need to have the discipline to do it. Does that make sense? So either you
Yeah.
start, and it's not like you just need to upload your song in Facebook or in Spotify. There's there has to be a strategy behind it. Okay, there has to be a strategy behind it, and there has to be a way on how you have to have a plan on how to promote it. You have to have a plan on how to push your music. It's
Yeah, for
not gonna
sure.
happen. I mean, you gotta be a god of music, where you have an amazing song that is just gonna blow up,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and it's
that's
funny
one in
because
10 million.
yeah, because I've noticed that even DJing too, that people's attention spans are super short nowadays, right? Like I remember I used to let tracks play longer, and now if I do that, you see people getting bored in the dance floor. So if I'm lucky, if it's a real big track, I can play maybe like a verse, maybe two verses and a chorus, and
Yeah,
then I have to be out, I have to mix out,
correct.
Sometimes it might even just be a verse and a chorus, and I have to be out, which is, I mean, that's super small if you think about it. People's attention spans, like you have to hook them like right off the bat in a song nowadays. It's pretty difficult if you think about it.
To make you feel better, I still miss the days where we used to play 12-inch LPs.
Yeah,
Remember those
yeah,
the remixes back in the day? They were what 12, almost 12 minutes long sometimes.
yeah. Even the transitions like were super
Yeah.
long, and like, yeah, that doesn't happen anymore.
No, no, no. Yeah,
It's all like quick mixing.
that's true.
Tell me about this next song. It's called Rosa Rosa, and it's a kind of duet, right? So tell me a little
Yes.
bit about that.
I just like the instrumentation. I personally don't. I'm not a big fan of Christian Castro, although he's a great singer. But
Okay.
I chose this song because I am a huge Sandro fan. Okay, Sandro to me has been the Latino Elvis. Okay,
Yeah.
and this song has. I heard this song since I am a little kid, because of my grandparents, my parents, my aunts, my uncles, everybody. And my grandfather used to have a radio station, so I used to listen a lot of Argentinian music. He used to play a lot of tango, but he used to play Sandro all the time. So
Okay.
for me, he was like a visual icon, if you want. He had that stage presence, that energy, that the pull with the ladies as well. You see every concert that he's doing. It's so much success, etc. So it was an icon for me, and I chose this song because I think uh, it's an iconic song, and it's one of his less dramatic songs, because most of his
And
songs are
it's still
super.
pretty dramatic. Yeah.
But the other ones are, I mean, exaggerated, dramatic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this would just represent a little bit of the what the roots of my Latin music listening kind of sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. So it reminds you of your grandfather and traditions and stuff like that, family, right? That's what it means to you?
Yes.
Awesome. Was there ever any, I guess, hesitation when you told them, "Hey, I want to do rock music"? Did they say anything? Like, was there any pushback, or were they supportive 100%? Like, yeah, you go do rock music.
My dad was always in the side of, you do whatever you want. You know, he was always supportive. Um, and and then so was my mom. And then my I think most my family was, because, and again, I was lucky enough to come from a family of tradition of music. Most my uncles, they didn't do music necessarily, but they all studied, and they all are very accomplished instrumentalists. I have my uncle. He sings opera, plays guitar, piano, native instruments from Bolivia. I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
but he does something very different in his life. But his dad was my teacher, but his dad was the actual guy that used to play also all the instruments, including violin, viola, cello, classical stuff, etc. And he was my music teacher when I was a kid. But he used to do music for a living. Okay, so
Oh
I
wow.
have that
Okay.
background, that combination, and so in that respect, I don't think anybody was surprised. They were just happy I could do this.
That's not the typical story you hear. You always hear about, there's always this pressure of like, you have to go to school, you have to get a good paying job. You're never going to make money being creative. So you're pretty fortunate to have the opposite happen where they kind of welcome the idea. You're really fortunate for having that, I think.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And again, I think I chose the song because it represents a lot of what I used to listen with family since I'm a kid. And now you get a better idea why I the line of kind of pop rock uh, came into my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm putting the puzzles together as we're
yeah.
speaking. So what do you do on your downtime? If everybody else like music might be their hobby or their dream job or whatever, but you're already doing that. So what do you do on your downtime when you're not quote unquote working?
I do regular things. I go out I have a very solid group of friends here in town. Um, you know, um, uh, like to visit some new restaurants, bars, normal. Sometimes I go and take a walk I try to go at least 2 or 3 times a day to at least take an hour walk to kind of
Do you
empty.
walk while listening to music or in silence?
Sometimes I listen to music. Sometimes I'm talking with somebody, try to em- empty my head of all the work related things. And
Tell me about the Buena Vista Social
uh,
Club.
I
I love this track.
yes, um, to me it has. I always had fascination with son cubano. I'm not a big salsa fan. I actually don't like too much salsa, but funny enough, I love son cubano. And
Okay.
and
Didn't you play in a salsa band here in Oklahoma? Or no?
no, 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 never, no,
No? Okay. I thought you may have done that.
no,
No?
no.
Okay.
Don't have the enough talent to play salsa. But that being said, I love um, Buena Vista because I think when they came out with a series of albums, if you remember correctly. I mean, this one came out, and then there was another Buena Vista, and then each one individually had an album, like Ruben Gonzalez, Omar Portuondo. I can't even remember the names of the other ones, but everyone had their own individual albums. There were songs that were repeated in one and the other, etc. But I like the pureness. I like the old. I like the vintagey. I like the how amazing something traditional and pure sounds.
Yeah, there's a lot of textures going on in the recording. Like there's valleys, and I really like that in recordings because nowadays everything's like way overdriven. Let's be as loud as we can. But on these albums, like there's dips and valleys, right, where stuff gets quieter and louder. And I like that a lot. And I think when this came out, once again, it was different than everything that was out at the time, too.
Yes, and the voices are
You said you didn't like salsa, so even like Mark Anthony or somebody
I,
huge.
I appreciate why they do. I admire, the musicianship they have in their bands, etc. But it's not my cup of tea.
Tell me a little bit about the concert side. So we haven't spoken about all these concerts that you put on throughout the state, and how'd you get into that? And tell us about all the work that goes into that because there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that has to happen.
Yeah, concerts is an animal, especially in this country. It's a huge deal. I done concerts in the Chesapeake Arena with Aerosmith, which is a huge production, 15 semi trucks full of gear that need to be set up, etc. Yeah, but you know what? that's one of the things I love about the United States is the artistic and the entertainment side that we have is so professional, it's so big, it's so amazing that that has also helped me to meet some of the artists, that I like.
Yeah.
Yeah, and see how they work and the things they do.
You enjoyed sort of being behind the scenes and having to do all that work, and versus, many people might say just being on stage might be the funner part of it.
Yes, it is definitely. I'm not a big fan of doing the backstage, back the scenes, but sometimes they hire me because I just happen to know how to do it. Yeah, but that being said, I also managed to meet some great artists and to see some amazing shows as well.
Was there anybody that you worked with that was not as professional as what you would have thought, and you thought like, geez, like it's hard working with this guy. You might be great, but
Yeah.
it's hard working with.
I,
Has that ever happened to you?
I don't think they're not very professional, but you see a lot of weird characters, uh, like
Give us an example. We want to hear something.
Bob Dylan.
Oh yeah,
Bob Dylan. So
what happened?
surprisingly, I had the opportunity to meet briefly Robert Plant, super nice guy, down to earth. Bob Dylan's very
That's really
eccentric.
Yeah, for
He
sure.
doesn't want to be
I could
talked.
tell.
Yes. And then you see people that are a little bit more, they look nicer when you see them in pictures than what they are in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting too with a lot of musicians is on stage they're this big act, they're like outgoing. You would think they were super like people person, but then off stage they're real shy. Want to keep to themselves. They don't really like talking to people, and I think that's pretty interesting. I don't know why it happens, but it seems to happen a lot with creatives that way.
Yeah.
Tell me about Paraíso Prometido.
This song is it has a funny story. One day, in an interview, a friend of mine asked me, "What would be the song that you would play before you die?"
Oh,
And I
wow.
found that being like a super weird question. And I am a big fan of Robbie Draco Rosa because I admire him as a producer. Let's not forget that he did the biggest songs in the Latin music history, which is
Sure.
Ricky Martin's hits, massive hits. So I've been always a big fan. And this particular song has that Caribbean song kind of vibe as well. The instruments are so well mixed between the modern drums, the modern bass, etc., with the traditional, strings instruments that they had in that part of the world. And this particular song, the lyrics, it just talks that we just need to get there to the promised paradise, but it's not in a religious way. Okay, it's just it's kind of like a more in a literary way. It's more like a poetry. So
So this would be the song that you would play before you die? Is that what you're saying?
just to be safe.
Yeah, I like it.
Yes.
Lots of texture, lots of sway.
Yes,
So
and
it definitely fits in with the rest of the
in
track.
lots of instruments, in lots of instruments. I think this guy has, he would be like Lenny Kravitz would be with American Rock and Roll. He collects sounds
Yeah.
and he puts all together in ways that you can't even. You're like, wow, all the time.
Yeah, I totally see that now. Now that you say Lenny Kravitz,
Yeah.
like that makes the perfect.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Tell me about what are the projects that you're currently working on? What's something that's going on?
I am producing. We just finished producing an EP for Lee Hernan. She's a local artist. She's from Puerto Rico,
Yeah.
actually.
Incredible voice.
Amazing.
She has a really strong
Yeah,
voice.
we just
Yeah.
finished producing an EP for her. We just finished doing a music video. So we're going to be launching her project pretty soon. We just need to finalize the strategy behind how we're going to do the social media and the music platforms. Believe it or not, it used to be, okay, I have a great song, here it is in the radio. Now it's a whole strategy behind the numbers that you need to kind of plan. Uh,
Yeah.
it is what it
What's
is.
even more interesting is what's happening with TikTok. So now all the kids are discovering music on TikTok. And to sort of blow up on TikTok, you have to have something memorable, like a memorable line or a hook or something. Have you paid attention to that? Like you only have like 15 seconds to like catch them,
Yeah,
So a lot of the new artists are using that to sort of, put their new songs out there.
yes, that's true. Yeah. I mean, you got to be creative, right?
But I mean, it's kind of limiting in a way because you only have 15 seconds. Like I have to make something catchy, and to me, I enjoy the full album, where artists would put out an album that has like sort of a theme to it.
Exactly.
That's kind of what I
Yes.
enjoy.
Yes.
It's pretty
And
cool to
I
do
don't
that
I
now.
don't want to date us, but that I think a lot of times can be seen as and interpreted as old fashioned. We are those old
Yeah.
fashioned guys that still listen to albums and 20 songs of one artist. You know what I mean? This is a different animal. This is a very different dynamic. I don't want to say sad, but it's just a different approach, I guess. If you're gonna have to do songs that are 50 seconds long, you know, I don't know, one of those punk rock bands from the 80s. Remember, they used to have like these 20-second songs.
Yeah, it's done.
they,
It's
they,
over.
they may be a comeback for them.
Yeah. But the rest of the band would be like, dude, you took all the
Yeah,
seconds. I don't have time.
I know.
That's
Yeah.
funny. What about with the advertising stuff? What kind of projects are you working on with the
Uh,
advertising stuff?
I do all the Hispanic advertising for Oklahoma City for Supermercados Morelos, and then I have other projects that we do a video production for St. Mary's Hospital, um, uh, and then I do most of the Spanish commercials for California for Matis Brothers and a few other
Okay.
clients. Yes.
All right. So we've come to your last song, and I think it's a good way to wrap things up with none other than Soda Estéreo. This track right here, pretty incredible track.
Brother, you said it. I mean, this I don't know Latino that doesn't like this song, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
and I think
If they don't like it, I don't know. We may have to say, maybe you're not Latino.
I think I chose this song first of all because of the band. I think
Yeah,
Soda Stereo is probably the most iconic rock band and rock pop band in Latin America. You know, their
sure.
history, etc. And and also, I think they're outside of just the music, the lyrical value that they had, through the years, and I think they have been the first mega artist in Latin America. Okay, they were, the Rolling Stones, they were the Beatles, they were, I don't, I mean, I don't think my memory is playing any games with me, but I don't remember or recall any other band that had such success so fast in the we're talking late 80s, early 90s as well.
Yeah, I mean, you could say Caifanes or something like that, but I don't think it's
But
to the
that came
level of
later.
Soda Stereo.
That came later too.
Yeah,
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 yeah. Maybe even Café da Cuba, maybe a good example, but that came
true.
later too. This is
Yeah.
this is the rock band of Latin America.
Yeah, for sure. And the vocals are really unique. Like when you hear the vocals, like you recognize that
Yeah.
voice, It's like a signature voice. You're not going to confuse that with anybody else. Awesome.
And by the way, I love Caifanes and Jaguares. Yeah.
Yeah. What about Mana? What do you
I,
think
I,
about
I
Mana?
like it. I think they're. I mean, they are another
Too much
monster.
pop?
Yeah, maybe too much for me, my taste. But they are. I mean, they have managed their career in an amazing way. I think they were the Soda Stereo. They became the Soda Stereo of Mexico. But but I think Soda Stereo has been the pioneers on this.
For sure. So on the podcast, I always let the guests ask the question of the day. So if you could ask one question to all the listeners out there, what question would you ask? And it could be something simple as like, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Or it could be something that's more in depth, something to make them think. So what would be your question for everybody out there listening?
I I I I would think in two. One is, what do you ask me before we did this podcast, when we were in the prepping stages, is what are the songs that meant something in your life, because we all have that song.
For
Yeah.
sure.
And
Yeah.
one thing and the reason I chose Paraíso Prometido, I would ask everybody, what would be the last song, if you would have the chance to listen one more song only, what would be
Oh,
that?
man.
That is the toughest question that somebody can ask you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would probably just die before I could make the decision. I don't think I would be thinking about all those wonderful
I know.
songs throughout my whole
It is.
life. That's a great
Yes.
question. All right. So I don't know if you want to share your social media or anything, but if people are interested in sort of finding you and following you throughout your journey and seeing all the cool projects you're working on, feel free to share your social media.
Yeah, you guys can visit me in, well, my website for my advertising is artistadvertising.com, and then I have Artist Recording Studio,
And artist is spelled out, right? So
ARES,
tell them how
yeah,
to
ARES. Mhm.
ARES, which we found out is our ex Ricardo. I just found that
Yeah.
out.
So, um, just come visit, and I am becoming a little bit more active because of you into making some more lists that I'm trying to make public. I just did also a compilation of songs in my Spotify, which is linked to my
Okay.
Facebook, that is called Latin America, and that has been published in UCO and university, for the pandemic.
Awesome.
So my
And
so the students.
on Spotify, they can just find you Ricardo Sasaki. Is that how they find you on
Yes,
Spotify?
Ricardo Sasaki
Okay.
Cajias. I used my mother's last name as well, so I used my paternal and maternal last names, and yeah, I think music is food for the spirit. So we consume music in every single aspect in our lives. Sometimes when we're studying, when we're eating, when we drive, when we're at home, etc.
When we're
Yeah,
sad. When
and
we're sad.
when we're
Breakup.
happy, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and also to me, as a closing point, my philosophy is, I think music changes a little bit of the status quo of situations in life. It is a peaceful way to send messages, and it's whether your message is strong, soft, subversive, revolutionary, whatever it is. It is a peaceful way to express yourself. And two, one of the reasons I also chose doing music production is because I believe in that. I believe that people have to be heard. If you have something to say, you need to say it. And for a lot of people, it's just not just the voice. Sometimes when you play an instrument, that's your voice. That's the way you're going to
Yeah.
transmit your message. Or maybe it's not a message, it's just you transmitting a feeling. But that's what is important to me to capture, to do music, to transmit something, and also record music to immortalize those feelings or those messages or whatever you have to say.
Yeah, I can't follow that up. That's a great way to wrap it up. Thanks a lot, Ricardo, for being on the show. I think you wrapped it up perfectly. So thanks a lot for being on the podcast. It means a lot to me. It was great just going through your journey here. So thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the invite. And I know you and I share a lot of good music together.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Sure.
and I hope I'll see you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the Maverick Podcast. Just chill to the next episode. Thanks a lot.